April 1st, 2014 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council, and that's no joke. It's my privilege to call this meeting to order. There are copies of our agenda on either side of the room on the shelves there. If you haven't already had the chance to do so, please pick up a copy of the agenda and you can follow along with our proceedings tonight. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, both with respect to items that are on our agenda tonight, as well as a segment under item 4, which is dedicated to public comments of a general nature with respect to things that are not on our agenda tonight. So we'll have lots of opportunities for public comment. It is our custom to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So at this point, I would like to ask everyone to please rise and join us in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And now I would like to ask for a roll call from our fine village clerk, Ms. Holden.
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Olson?
Here.
Commissioner Rankin?
Here.
Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Commissioner Neustadt? Commissioner Durkin? Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you. It's a flashback to 1999, 5-member council. I'm dating myself. That brings us to item 3 on our agenda, minutes of council meetings. We have minutes from 2 sets of meetings for approval tonight, one for approval only from executive session minutes of March 4th, 2014, and the minutes from our regular council meeting on March 18th of 2014. Are there any changes, questions, corrections, or comments from members of the council with respect to either set of minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None? Great, those minutes are approved. And that brings us right to item 4. Item 4 is reserved for public comments of a general nature with respect to items that are not on our agenda tonight. So at this point in time, I would invite any members of the audience who would like to make a comment with respect to matters of a general nature to please come down to the podium. What we ask you to do is please just give us your name and address, and we would welcome hearing from you. And we have some folks that are headed down to the podium right now. I was going to ask a question of Commissioner Jose just to fill the time about spring break plans, but you're at the podium. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Flasha, and I'm from 413 67th Court in Downers Grove. And I'm here because my street is supposed to get a sidewalk on one side this summer. And I'm also with several of my neighbors. I have a petition signed by my block because we don't find them necessary. We don't feel the village should be spending right around $68,000 for a sidewalk that's not going to go used. It's going to come from Fairview. It's going to hit in the middle of one of the residents' houses, which is like middle of the cul-de-sac, you could kind of say, right where it starts. There are 8 children on the block. None of the 8 will use the sidewalk to walk to school. They cut through a yard. They're not going to walk up to Fairview, walk down Fairview, and then walk down 68th. They're going to cut through a yard. Our street does not connect to anything. There's no shopping within a mile. There is no reason for there to be a sidewalk. There has never been an accident there of any kind. People are aware the kids play in the cul-de-sac. The sidewalk's not even going to go in the cul-de-sac. So I mean, it's really a waste of village money. It's going to take out trees. It has the potential of ruining a lot of mature trees, and it's going to tear up our street. We already have a drainage problem, and this isn't going to make it any better or worse. It's just going to add to it. And I have 8 tall trees in front of my home, and I fear with you pruning them again that they're going to fall, and they're going to fall on the bedroom where one of my kids sleep. So, I mean, I really think this is an unnecessary thing to do. I understand it's Downers Grove policy to have a sidewalk on one side of every street, but this policy was written a long time ago, 10 or 15 years. It's time for this policy to be looked at again. We also know that Denburn Woods is not getting a sidewalk. They're located in Downers Grove as well. So we feel that we should be treated the same. If they're not getting one, why do we have to have one? So, and I have the petition. So.
Please. That was very well stated, but if you could please hold the applause and hand that to Assistant Village Manager Mike Baker. Appreciate it. Thank you for your comments. We appreciate you and your neighbors coming out here today. We'll obviously take a look at the petitions. Just by way of background, I know you know this, following TCD 2, I believe it was, which was in 1996, there were a series of community meetings with respect to what the future of Downers Grove should be and what the community wanted, and I believe there was input from all across the community. Something similar to what we did in TCD 3, Total Community Development 3, which took place more recently, where it really was a series of, over a long period of time, a lot of different focus groups from people all over the village, not just on any block, but including every part of town. And what came out of that was a directive from the community. It wasn't from this council. Of course, that council's long since gone. But from the community itself, that one of the things that Downers Grove should have are sidewalks on at least one side of every street. That doesn't mean that there haven't been real-life adjustments from time to time, and I understand that's one of the things that you're advocating for. But just to address the why do we do that in the first place, I think it's just important to understand the history that that was a directive that came from the community that the council has been implementing. And because sidewalks take a while to put in, and we do it as funds become available, and obviously there's been some more funds available in some years than others due to various things like the economy, it's taken a while. And we are now getting to the end of what's called the matrix of where all the sidewalks are supposed to go. We obviously started with the ones that, for various factors, got to the top of the list because of safety, proximity to parks and schools and things like that. So by definition, we're now getting down to the ones that aren't going to be close to shopping and aren't going to be close to schools. But they've always been on the matrix. They've been on the matrix since the matrix was created probably, I don't know, 20 years ago. Something like that. A while. So I just wanted to address that in terms of why you're even on the list. Certainly on design issues, I know that the staff is very good about doing the best they can to work with everyone in terms of going around trees and respecting trees. If there are drainage issues, they may need to be looked at regardless of all this, because it sounds like from discussions we had earlier, there may be some drainage issues. Forget about the sidewalks. We may want to follow up with members of your block just to address those, setting aside the sidewalk issue. But certainly we've always tried to accommodate the terrain, the right-of-way, because I know right-of-ways aren't always the same in every street. It depends because of the way Downers Grove developed. And there is a need issue where we sometimes have situations where the people that live on the block today do or do not want sidewalks, but we understand that we're really talking about the next 50 years, and if somebody lives in the block 20 years from now and says, well, wait a minute, we were supposed to get sidewalks back in 2014, why didn't you knuckleheads put them in? Well, then we get into the issue of it's almost polling every block. So that's just some of the things that we struggle with. I just want to share with that. But I appreciate you and all your neighbors coming down here. We've gotten emails. I appreciate the communications that you provided to us. We'll certainly consider the petitions. We're obviously not deciding that issue tonight. We're not addressing it tonight. But thank you for coming here and expressing your views. Obviously, if there's others who want to speak on the topic, please do so. We welcome you to do so, and glad you're here tonight. But if you want to do it through what you have as a very capable spokeswoman, that's fine too. But thank you for your comments.
Thank you. I just want to add one other thing.
By all means.
By all the sidewalk meetings that we've been attending, they keep pushing that it's a safety issue, it's a safety issue, and I understand that you're saying it's a safety issue, but I also want to raise the fact that my kids go to school in District 58 where the DARE program was cut because we were told there's not enough financing for it, and to me that's a safety issue because with the rise of drug use and the suicide rate because of drug use and Downers Grove is climbing, I think that that's a bigger issue, and $68,000 could be used to put the DARE program back into our school system where it's truly needed. That, to me, is a bigger safety issue than a sidewalk that's not going to get used. So I just wanted to add that. So,
thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here tonight.
thanks.
Other questions and comments, please?
I agree with her wholeheartedly. The $68,000 could be put somewhere else.
Sir, I apologize if you wouldn't mind coming down because we are recording this and it's on television and no one at home will hear you, if you don't mind. And I know everybody at home really wants to hear what you have to say, so if you wouldn't mind. Thank you. If you could please just give us your name and address. I bet you it's on 67th Street.
My name is Ken Vork. I live at 407 67th Court. I agree with her totally. If the $68,000 could go in a drug program, put it to schools, we don't need the sidewalks. That's like the bridge to Alaska goes nowhere. 2 years ago, you put in drainage ditches in our area. My front yard, I might as well go out there bass fishing. doesn't work. Keep on telling the people, don't worry about it, we'll take care of it. So I imagine what's going to happen if you put the sidewalks in, plus the drainage ditch that doesn't work, I'm going to have more water in my front yard. I think the $68,000 could be put to better use than a sidewalk that's going to go nowhere and nobody's going to use it. Everybody on our block has signed a petition. You say this happened in 1998, things change. Just because it was in a letter of the law 15 years ago doesn't mean it's going to be like it is now. And I'll understand that last year you were supposed to put sidewalks in our area, but you ran out of money. So why put it in this year? Save the $68,000, put it to a better use, where people could use it or want it. We don't need it, we don't want it. I'd like you to fix the drainage ditch before you do the sidewalks. That's all I have to say.
Well, thank you for coming and sharing your views on that. And as I said, the drainage issue is something that we can follow up on regardless of the sidewalk issue. So thank you for bringing that to our attention as well. Other questions or comments of a general nature from any members of the audience? And we do fully appreciate that although two of you have spoken, that there are many more of you in the audience that share the same view. We do understand that. I'm sorry, I thought I saw somebody getting up. No? All right, very good. Then what I would like to do at this point in time is invite a special guest that we have here tonight. Most of you are, or should most of you, be aware of the Downers Grove Sanitary District, which is not exactly coterminous with the boundaries of the Village of Downers Grove, but to a large degree is. But they are, as comes as a surprise to many people, not the same organization. The Downers Grove Sanitary District is a distinct entity from the Village of Downers Grove, although we do share the name Downers Grove proudly in our name. We are very pleased to have here tonight Nicholas Menenga, who is the Director, General Manager of the Downers Grove Sanitary District, and one of the trustees in the Downers Grove Sanitary District is also, oh, sorry, couldn't see behind Nick there. We have a couple of trustees here tonight. Good evening, welcome. Thank you for being here. And Mr. Menenga is going to share some information with us about the Sanitary District. Welcome, we're glad to have you and members of your board here tonight.
Thank you very much, Mayor Tully. I certainly will like to introduce two of our trustees from the Downers Grove Sanitary District who are in attendance tonight, Amy Kovacevic and Wally Van Buren.
Welcome.
And thanks again for the opportunity to present some information for the Council about the Downers Grove Sanitary District. The Downers Grove Sanitary District was formed by referendum in 1921 under the 1917 Sanitary District Act. I guess there was about a 300-person referendum, and the majority of them went for it, so we became a local municipal government. We're a publicly owned special service district, so what we provide is only sanitary sewerage service. Anybody who's a property owner that's been annexed into our sanitary district, it becomes an owner of the sanitary district, kind of like a stockholder. The way we're managed, we have three trustees, two of whom are here tonight. Wally Van Buren is actually a resident of the Village of Westmont. Amy Kovacevic and Don Peters are residents of the Village of Downers Grove. I'm Nick Menenga, the general manager. I'm a full-time staff person at the sanitary district, similar to Dave Fieldman's role here with the city, or with the village. We have monthly meetings. Once a month, the trustees meet, and they take up issues like ordinances, policies, and programs. I'm going to name everybody in the organization chart. No, kidding. We have about 30 to 35 people, depending on the time of year. We have three main areas. We have the treatment plant on the left side of the chart, administration in the central part of the chart, and collection system staff on the right side of the chart. Our service area, as you mentioned, is different than the boundaries of the Village of Downers Grove. We actually serve the portion of Westmont on this side of Cass. We also serve a portion of Darien. We serve a portion of Oak Brook. We also serve a portion of Woodridge. We have a couple customers in Lisle. So we actually have a fairly large service area. We were given what was called a facilities planning area when the Clean Water Act was started in the early 70s. And it was basically designed on engineering criteria. It's kind of a drainage basin that makes sense to be, it's about the right size for everything to drain mostly by gravity towards a central location where we can treat the sewage. You'll notice on the map, the light green color, those are parcels that are annexed into the sanitary district. The orange parts of the map are parts that aren't currently annexed into the sanitary district. Some of them are undeveloped, but most of those are actually on septic right now. We could talk a little bit we'll talk a little bit about how those potentially would get served in the future. Our main, most visible asset is our treatment plant. It has 11 million gallons a day of average capacity. Currently, our average flows in dry weather are about 8 million gallons a day. So you can see that we have a substantial amount of excess capacity available. So we don't need to do any expansion to accommodate any anticipated growth in our facilities planning area. We also have a lot of maximum treatment capacity. We can provide full treatment to about 22 million gallons a day, twice what we have for capacity for dry weather. And in wet weather, we can treat up to 10 times what we take in dry weather. So we have a substantial amount of capacity. The high end of that capacity, we don't provide the same level of treatment. For low flow, we provide tertiary treatment and ammonia removal. For those really high flows, we actually provide secondary treatment for flows in excess of the capacity of the tertiary portion of the facility. So we don't give quite the same level of treatment when we get a lot of flow. The treatment plant dates to 1954. That was when the first construction was done on this site. We have quite a bit of property. We have some future needs, and we also like to have some buffer area around our plant. Obviously, we don't want any residential neighbors with a fence line on our property watching what we do. It's best for everybody involved. This is just kind of an overview of all the different parcels that we own are surrounding the treatment facility. You'll notice that we also own a couple parcels that we actually lease some of that to Public Works for the salt barn and the parking lot and a part of the building. And that we've got a long-term lease with the village to provide that. The challenges that we have at our treatment plant, right now we're very focused on trying to deal with energy. It's a very energy-intensive process. We use a lot of electricity in order to treat sewage. We're very focused on trying to put in the infrastructure so that we're able to minimize our energy demand from ComEd and minimize our costs on electricity. So right now we're putting in a facility that converting our digester gas into electricity, so in an attempt to get off the grid and save our customers costs, operational costs, and keep our bills under control for our customers. Some of the challenges we're looking at in the future from a regulatory standpoint, there's a lot of interest in the regulatory world on us improving our facilities so that we're able to remove nitrogen and phosphorus before we discharge to the river. Those potentially have a substantial increase in the cost of treatment for us. There would be a lot of infrastructure and then operational costs that would increase. There's also some concern at the national level from the regulatory front about the way we handle excess flow. We handle excess flow typical the way Illinois facilities do, but on the national discussion that there may be there's some questioning on how we do that. So that has the potential to have significant increases in our cost of treatment in the future. Our next big asset set is the sewage collection system. We have 9 remote lift stations and about a little over 250 miles of sewer main. Some of it dates back to 1904, similar to your water system. There's also 300 miles of privately owned service pipe. That's the pipe connecting the house to the main. Those are all owned by property owners, including the connection at the main. We don't own those by our ordinance. Those are owned by each property owner. The sewers are designed to handle only sewage flow. They're called separate sanitary sewers. Since they're so old, they're pretty leaky. And we get a lot of what we call infiltration inflow. So when it rains, our flows go up dramatically. And we can talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we have with our collection system. Obviously, they're aging assets. They go back to 1904. If we were to go out and replace every pipe in town, it would be a huge mess, and it would cost $225 million. So we're very focused on the condition of those assets, the service life of those assets, and then the need to rehabilitate or replace those assets in order to keep them functioning at a high level. And we're working within the confines of our existing revenue stream in order to keep everything operating, try to minimize the risk associated with the collection system. Infiltration and inflow is a significant challenge for us. It can overwhelm a system of mostly 8-inch gravity pipes. You're probably familiar with the way the storm sewers are. They're significantly bigger than that. Sanitary sewers are very small. It doesn't take a lot of rainwater to get those so that they start to back up and potentially back up into people's basements in big storm events, or have manholes that overflow into the street or parkways. So that's obviously a big challenge for us to keep that under control. Plus, that excess water is expensive for us to take down to our treatment plant and then treat it there. It limits our treatment effectiveness at the treatment plant, and it comes from all over the place. It's public sources. In other words, it comes off public right-of-ways of public property, leaks into the main sewers, but a lot of it comes off private property. It comes from houses and connections at houses that people don't know about or shouldn't be there, or just, from a long time ago, or just have never been corrected. In order to address those issues, we have a number of collection system programs that we think are very proactive in terms of trying to get people to provide for just better overall service of the collection system. We have an overhead sewer program that's pretty common in a lot of municipalities. We actually have a cost-sharing program for legacy properties that don't have backflow protection. We'll spend up to $3,000 per property in a 50-50 cost share program for people to retrofit overhead sewers into their basements, so that if their sewer outside their house does back up, they'll be protected from that and won't get into their basement. We also have a backup reimbursement program. If there's a blockage in the main, in our main that we're supposed to be maintaining, we actually have a program to reimburse cleaning expenses for cleaning up if there's a backup for that type of a backup. It doesn't apply during storm events. A storm event we consider to be an act of God, so we don't really have a backup reimbursement program for that. But we do it if we're not properly maintaining the line. We also have something that's very unique to our service area. It's called the Building Sanitary Service Repair Assistance Program. We polled our customers a number of years ago and asked them if they'd be interested in having a program where we would repair the building service, the piece of pipe from the house to the street. And overwhelmingly, we got interest in providing that service. So we developed this program where we provide that service for people who have chronic problems with their building service. We're able to provide professional construction management. We actually have a contractor that does that repair work under our supervision, so we're able to get very good pricing for that and offer a very professional service for getting that done. So that's been a very good boon for it's the most popular thing that we do, bar none. Plus, we're able to, it facilitates our ability to enforce our ordinance for II prohibitions on private property. So it's a win-win for everybody involved. We also have, the final program we have is an infiltration inflow program. This is something that is proactive by us. We systematically monitor the entire collection system to identify priority areas. We also record information about backups and overflows, and we identify specific areas where we feel it's important, the highest priority areas for us to remove II on a wholesale basis in a small area of town, maybe a 200 to 300 house chunk of our collection system. What we do, we'll do an intensive survey in a priority area. We'll identify all public and private sources of infiltration inflow, and we'll go out and repair all those. And when we do that, we have a limited amount of ordinance enforcement. If someone has a downspout connected to our sanitary sewer, or if someone has a sump pump handling stormwater that's connected to our sanitary sewer, we'll enforce them to disconnect that. But pretty much every other source of II that we find in that type of survey will, at the sanitary district's expense, will repair it. We do that because that benefits everybody in the collection system by reducing that amount of II. We do a lot of construction coordination with the village. We meet regularly with Andy Sikich over at Public Works, and we do routine project coordination with Public Works. We want to appear to the public that we're coordinating. We don't want to be tearing up the same street two years back to back. So we do work together quite a bit. Some examples of that, when you guys just redid Washington Street, we had several manholes replaced. We just got the bill for that today. So we'll be reimbursing you for the cost of those manholes. When Oakwood and Middow got put in as brick streets, it was the same situation. We reimbursed the village for actually replacing the entire sewer on those two streets. A number of years ago, we did a small special assessment in Cornell and Curtis. We managed the project for sewer installation, and then you reimbursed us, I think, for the water main installation for that special assessment. So we've been able to coordinate wonderfully. I mean, we work really good together. There are challenges to that. Our priorities aren't always the same. Sometimes contractors aren't always aware. Sometimes, there's a lot of subsurface type of construction that doesn't always spot our utilities in advance, so we get holes poked in some of our utilities, but eventually it all gets fixed. But it's always a challenge. And then in emergencies and short-range projects, it's kind of difficult to coordinate those as well, just because it takes some time to line up funding, as you know. Our administration, our building on Curtis Street was put up in the 70s. We expect it to last 100 years, meets our needs. We do billing and collections. We actually pay the village to transmit your water meter read information to us so that we can use that for our billing. And our billing coordinator and your billing coordinator are like speed dial buddies. They talk to each other all the time because they have similar issues with similar customers. Our HR, we don't have any collective bargaining. Our compensation, we routinely benchmark against industry standards locally and statewide. We have merit-based increases. We have competitive benefits. We have, like you have IMRF, health insurance. We think we have a very highly motivated, highly skilled set of employees that are really focused on the mission of the district. The other thing, we also get vehicle fuel from the village too. The fueling station at Public Works, we take advantage of that, and I think we pay a small surcharge for your cost to do that. It helps you because it provides you with a larger amount of purchasing so that you can get better pricing. So that's good. A typical service cost for one of our customers, if this would be a typical residential, $300,000 residential home that's using 8,000 gallons a month in 2013, would have been paying $26.58 a month for our service. This is among the lowest in the state. Very good rate, helps to keep this community very competitive for attracting businesses as well as making it more livable for everybody here. And some of the outreach that we do, we're very active all over the place. We're involved on a national scale with the National Association of Clean Water Agencies in Washington. We're very active with the Illinois Association of Wastewater Agencies, very active in Springfield. Wally is actually our president of our trustees is actually IEW's liaison to CMAP, the regional planning agency. He sits on the wastewater board for CMAP. At the county, we're one of the founding members of the DuPage River Salt Creek Work Group, which I think the village is also a member of. And on the local, we do an annual open house every October. I know several people here have been to it. It's a really good family-oriented thing. You can see the pictures of it here. We send out a newsletter once a year with our bills. We have a customer-oriented website. And we just started our Facebook page about a month ago. So that's and that kind of concludes what I had to present for everybody. I'm willing to take any questions if anybody has anything that they would like to hear about.
Well, Mr. Menenga, thank you so much for being here, and the very thorough and detailed presentation is greatly appreciated. I'll just mention, not only do we appreciate it, but the open house is, it's a great presentation, but when you're actually on site and you can see the equipment, you can see the functionality of the campus, it really brings to life a lot of things you're talking about. And if folks haven't had the opportunity to attend the annual open house at the sanitary district, I would encourage you to do so, because it's an important function that's provided here in the community by the sanitary district, and understand what's involved and really the volumes that you handle and how you handle them is really quite remarkable. And of course I can geek out on the science behind it, but it's just very interesting. So thank you for your service to the community and everything that you do for us, because it is an essential service. One question I do have, I know you and I have chatted about this in the past, what do you see coming down the pipeline in terms of impacts upon your operations and budget, primarily from the increasingly tight discharge requirements for water quality purposes? I know there's some, I forget what it is, whether it's, I can't think of the
right now,
the composition exactly, but you know what I'm talking about.
Right now, the big issue that's being discussed from EPA is phosphorus.
Phosphorus, thank you. That was
EPA is very interested in I guess there's still some uncertainty in the scientific community about how beneficial it would be for us to spend a lot of money removing phosphorus at our treatment facility. One of the things that we've been doing as an active participant of our watershed work group, that's a countywide consortium, is negotiating with EPA because we've identified what we think are much more important projects that will help to improve the quality of the aquatic community in the streams in DuPage County by spending money on things like river restoration instead of something like phosphorus reduction that there's a little bit more, significantly more question about whether it'll provide a real benefit in the environment. It's actually been very active in the last couple of weeks, those discussions, and we think we've, the Watershed Group Consortium thinks that we've gotten a lot of support from the Environmental Activists Consortium, the Sierra Club and the Prairie Rivers Network and the Conservation Foundation are all actively supportive of what we're trying to do. So I think we're kind of in the final throes of coming up with what we think is a lower cost solution for countywide, on the countywide basis, that'll give us more progress towards having fishable waters in the county.
Right, to actually get to the desired goal in a more efficient, less expensive manner. And I appreciate you sharing that because I know that's something that's definitely a countywide initiative and is very much on the radar screen, and there's some facilitation coordination going on through DuPage mayors and managers with respect to trying to do that so that we can actually get a better benefit at a lower cost to each municipality and everyone else who's affected, including the sanitary districts in DuPage County.
Yeah, Downers Grove is at the forefront of that.
We try to be. I don't want to monopolize all your time. I don't know if my colleagues have any questions.
I think there's a question from the audience. I didn't see Commissioner Jose had a question.
Sure, hold on. Let me, if you wouldn't mind, sir, just one moment. Let me just see if there are any questions up here, as long as I'm up here. And then, sure, if you wouldn't mind, sir, and again, only so the folks at home can hear you. I would hate them to only hear the answer, not the question. Now you know why I was joking about sitting so far back.
I know.
Thank you.
I like your presentation. Thanks. Appreciate it. Again, my name's Ken Ovorka, 407 67th Court. Based on this presentation, I guess our infrastructure isn't the way it's supposed to be, and we're short of funds. Correct?
Well,
Close to it.
I wouldn't say we're short of funds.
We'll put it off until something happens. Instead of putting a sidewalk for $68,000, why don't you put it in the infrastructure?
Write a check to the sanitary district?
That's right, write them a check and do it. That's all I have to say. I'm serious, prioritize your money. If you got so much money, prioritize.
Understood, and I would welcome you to our next long-range planning session when we do that every year. I would love to have you in the audience and hear your views on it.
You let me know when, and I will be here.
I bet we probably know the date. I knew I'd put you on the spot, wouldn't I? It'll be on our website.
Okay, I'm just,
But seriously, we do that. We do that every year, not just for the coming year, but also for 5 years out.
that's all I have to say, prioritize. You got so much bucks, that's it.
That's right, understood. Thank you, sir. Any other questions of Mr. Menenga with respect to the Downers Grove Sanitary District? Nice tying with the sidewalks, by the way. That was good. Hearing no others, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the presentation and welcome, and thank you for being here tonight. Welcome to 801 Burlington. I don't have the coffee and donuts that you guys had for us during the open house. I apologize. Very good. Well, that brings us to the end of item 4, comments of a general nature. That brings us to item 5, council member reports. This is an opportunity for council members to report out on any items of general community interest or goings-on in the community. Start tonight with Commissioner Barnett.
I have nothing, Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
No
Commissioner
report.
Olson? Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to report out that Commissioner Olson and I actually attended the ribbon cutting for Benoit Wimp's new home for his State Farm agency here in Downers Grove at 6900 Main Street on Thursday, March the 20th. We're thrilled to have this Downers Grove resident locating his business now in the village. And I know a good time was had by, seemed everybody. I think Commissioner Olson had a good time. I know I did.
Absolutely.
And just wanted to say thanks to Benoit for bringing his business right here in Downers Grove. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Appreciate you both attending. Commissioner Rankin?
I have no report. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one item I want to share. I just want to remind or advise everyone that there will be a special event coming up on April 11th and 12th, and although it won't be held in the village of Downers Grove, it will nevertheless have an impact upon very important contingency within our community. And I'm speaking of an event that is a fundraiser for the 100 Club of DuPage County, which supports law enforcement and firefighting personnel and their families. For those of you who may not be familiar with the 100 Club of DuPage County, the club offers assistance to families of law enforcement and firefighting personnel who have been killed, injured, or otherwise stricken while residing or working in DuPage County. The members of the 100 Club show the men and women who serve and protect us that their sacrifices, their lives, and families are important to us. One of their main events this year will be a Tom Dreesen charity event. For those of you, I'll have to explain who Tom Dreesen is to Commissioner Olson. Tom Dreesen was famously a comedian who opened for many, many years for none other than Frank Sinatra, back when the chairman was in his prime and for many years thereafter. Mr. Dreesen very generously has offered to hold 2 shows on Friday, April 11th and Saturday, April 12th of this year. They will both be at the Wentz Concert Hall at North Central College in Naperville. The charity event will be called An Evening of Laughter and Memories of Frank Sinatra. Mr. Dreesen will perform some of his comedy and also share with the audience his experiences of working with Frank Sinatra back in the day. And the proceeds, I mean, he's basically donating his time, or most of it, and the proceeds, or majority of the proceeds, will go to support the 100 Club of DuPage County. If anyone is interested in tickets, I would recommend that you go to the website www.100clubofdupage.org, and that's 100 spelled out, and see if you could attend. It should be a nice evening. Of course, I would advocate that you dine in Downers Grove before going to the show in Naperville, but that's just a suggestion from me. That's all I have. That brings us to item 6, which is reserved for public hearings. We have no public hearings tonight. So we'll move on to item 7, our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to any items on the consent agenda? Questions or comments from members of the council? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to item 8, our active agenda. We have 2 items on our active agenda tonight. The first item is item 8A as in apple. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance adopting the 2014 zoning map?
Mayor Tully, I move to adopt an ordinance adopting and approving the publication of the Village of Downers Grove 2014 zoning map as presented.
Second.
Any questions or comments on this from any members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. That passes unanimously. It brings us to item 8B as in boy. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance that will adopt mitigation standards for new residential construction in accordance with the State of Illinois Radon Resistant Construction Act?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments from the audience? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. That matter also passes unanimously. That brings us to the end of our active agenda and on to our first reading. This is item 9, our first reading, or what we call our workshop agenda, where items are presented for information and discussion purposes only and voting at a later point in time, if at all. We have a number of items on our workshop agenda tonight, items 9A through G. As is customary, we turn this over at this point in time for presentation to village staff for presentation. We have our assistant village manager here tonight, Michael Baker. Mr. Baker, good evening.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor. Yes, we have 7 items under the first reading portion of the agenda, the first 6 of which are Public Works related, hence the reason that our Public Works Director is sitting to my right. And I'm going to turn it over to her, Nan Newland, for presentation of these first 6 items.
Very good. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mike. We have, like Mike said, a number of Public Works items tonight. The first 2 are construction contracts, the first of which is Brook Drive and Center Circle. We're requesting a motion to award a contract for the Brook Drive Center Circle roadway reconstruction project to A-Lamp Concrete Contractors of Schaumburg, Illinois, in the amount of $3,645,081.15. The scope of this project includes the reconstruction of Brook Drive, Center Circle, and portions of Downers Drive, the replacement of storm sewers, and the installation of new sidewalk along Brook Drive and Center Circle. We'll also be performing drainage improvements that will reduce flooding that regularly occurs in a portion of this area. I just have a location map here to show you. This is the very northern portion of the village, north of Butterfield Road. It's an industrial area just to the east of Finley, and north behind Best Buy and that shopping area there. These are the streets that I just referenced that are getting reconstructed. This is going back to the list of our reconstructed streets that we're performing with our $25 million bond issue. We are also doing Downers Grove Estates and Esterbrook this year, which we brought to you at a previous council meeting. A call for bids was issued and published in accordance with the village's purchasing policy. We received 5 bids. A-Lamp Concrete Contractors was the low bidder. They have satisfactorily completed a variety of projects for the village, very related projects, including in 2012 and 2013, Valley View Subdivision, Concord Square Unit 2, Oak Grove Unit 3, and they've also completed comparable projects for the village's communities of Bartlett, Bloomingdale, and Lombard, and staff recommends award of this contract to A-Lamp Concrete Contractors. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Any questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to this item? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Very efficient presentation.
Thank you.
Brings us to the next item.
Our second contract tonight is resurfacing Contract A, the first of our 2 major street maintenance contracts for the year. A motion is requested to award a contract for the 2014 Resurfacing A project to Central Blacktop Company, Inc. of LaGrange, Illinois, in the amount of $2,461,438.87. As I said, this project is a component of the 2014 roadway maintenance program for the village, and as well as performing work on about 29 street segments, which are included in your packet. This is a list of them here. We are also doing work on Burlington Road west of Belmont, which is, it's referred to as Lot G. It's a commuter parking lot for the Belmont station. That work is being done in conjunction with this contract. The scope of the work includes resurfacing of streets on this list with a new layer of asphalt, along with repairs of defective sections of concrete curb and gutter and some patching to failed sections of the pavements as well. A call for bids was issued, and we received 3 bidders. Central Blacktop Company was the low bidder, and they have satisfactorily completed the village's 2006, 2007, 2012, and 2013 contracts for street maintenance. And staff recommends award of this contract, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the audience on this project? Please, sir.
What kind of warranty and guarantee do we have on this project?
I will repeat the question so everybody at home can hear it, because I know we didn't want to have a hat trick tonight. That would have been, if you came all the way down. The question was, what kind of warranty or guarantee is there on the project? So basically, I guess the question is with respect to the resurfacing projects at the various locations that are indicated. If the work isn't done or doesn't stand up to the standards that we spec out in the bid documents, what recourse do we have?
There is a warranty period of a year after construction.
Any other questions or comments from the audience? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Barnett?
One is, did this definition for the bid, what went out for bid, was it adjusted at all within the last, 10 weeks, given the fiasco we went through weather-wise?
Are you talking about the specification?
Yeah, well, the scope of work, really. The winter we had was certainly something that in August, September, October, we weren't necessarily foreseeing. So when we see the budgeted amount, was the scope adjusted at all based on the weather we had to endure over the winter?
The scope of this project was not, but we went out to bid this, typically we go out to, in the fall, we go out for a fall patching contract. And what we're going to do this spring is we're going to do that, we're going to do 2 patching contracts this year. We're going to do a spring patching contract that we've opened bids for just this week, and we'll be bringing to you in April.
Okay, perfect.
For approval.
That was,
and I think that will address many
Yeah.
of those areas.
fantastic, thanks.
Good question. Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the council? I'll just mention that this project and the one before it together represent about a $6 million investment in streets and roads in Downers Grove, and this is a continuation of what we've been seeing now for several years of getting caught up on some much-needed road maintenance throughout the community. And I know this is not all there will be, but it's another significant investment in our infrastructure. Thank you for the presentation.
The next,
9C.
the next item is a stormwater variance for a proposed new home at 4924 Lynn Scott Avenue. This is a variance for the stormwater and floodplain, village's stormwater and floodplain ordinance. It would allow for a detached garage to be constructed at the base flood elevation in a local poor drainage area, rather than 1 foot above the base flood elevation. This is a exhibit here that shows the location of this property. This is Prince Pond. The area in blue with the squiggly lines, that is the local poor drainage area, or the LPDA. The properties there with the red and yellow box, that is the lot in question. And as you can see, it's completely surrounded by this LPDA, local poor drainage area. The LPDA is designated because it receives periodic flooding, and it's regulated by the village, similar to like a floodplain would be, comparable on the federal scale. The petitioner plans on demolishing the existing house and constructing a new single-family house with a detached garage. He's requesting a variance to section 26.505B of the municipal code to permit the floor of the garage to be constructed at the same elevation as the base flood elevation for this LPDA, instead of 1 foot above as designated in the village code. Now, this complies with the county code, but the village code is stricter on this point than the village code is. The reason I did this, and I'll show you a table here, is because they're trying to minimize impact to the local poor drainage area and to the surrounding homes. On the left side of this table, we show what the existing condition is. There's currently a home there with a basement. The home currently is at or below the base flood elevation, so they do receive water in their basement. The new home will be built with no basement. It will actually be built as the village code requires, with the lowest floor 3 feet above the base flood elevation. And to minimize fill, they're building it on piers. So this is being built completely in conformance with village code. The garage, as we said before, is currently below the base flood elevation. The proposed garage is being planned to be built. They'd like to build it at the base flood elevation, which meets the county code, but is requiring the ordinance we're presenting tonight. Because it does not meet the threshold to incorporate best management practices on this lot, they're not required, but they are putting them anyway. They're putting in a dry well, which looks somewhat like this. It's built to captures the downspout water. It helps collect some of the initial runoff from the property. The area shown in the box is a big area underground, which has a filter fabric around it and a lot of stone to capture the runoff. If the garage was to be built up higher on the property, that would also mean that the garage would have to be built up higher to get to the garage, and would require more fill in the local poor drainage area. And and then they'd have to put in some comp storage to mitigate for that fill. So it would require a lot more grading on the property, which is why they're asking for the variance. The Stormwater and Floodplain Oversight Committee held a required public hearing at the March 13th meeting, and no objections were received on the variance. The committee unanimously recommended approval of the variance, subject to the conditions of the draft ordinance, and staff concurs with this recommendation. And I would be happy to answer any questions you have on this item.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation. Are there any comments or questions from members of the audience on this item? Any questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Barnett?
Well, I'm going to drag everybody back to one of my favorite subjects, which has to do with our stormwater ordinance. And this is, what we're seeing here is both a builder and an owner who are trying their best to do the right thing and be helpful, which is awesome. But I don't want to judge anybody, certainly not knowing their conditions, but the fact that we're in an LPDA has a lot to do, likely, with why this work is being done, kind of extraordinary work at their own expense, particularly the dry well situation. And so those are our best management practices, many of them, what they're doing, but they're not compelled but for the LPDA situation. And so it's a good exercise for my colleagues, us to consider this situation and think about how this might play out elsewhere as we hopefully keep on the subject of what our ordinance ought to look like on a broader basis for all parcels through the community. I'm glad they're doing this work, and it's a good project. This is the kind of work that I think we ought to be, through ordinance, compelling in lots more locations. Yeah, compelling is the word I'd use, Martin. But yeah. So just a reminder to everybody that this is the very subject matter that I keep trying to bring us back to.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions, comments? Commissioner Rankin?
I would agree with Commissioner Barnett. They have a situation that isn't great, and they're improving it. And I'm glad that we have the ability for them to petition us to make a situation better for their neighbors and for them, too. And that we don't just stick to the rules and not provide opportunities for them to come in and ask for this kind of variance. The thing that I think I understand correctly, and I just want to make sure I do, if they filled in the LPDA, not only would it would create more, asking them to build it up at the level that our requirement is, would create more flooding problems for their neighbors because they're filling in the LPDA and then they're also having an elevation issue, right?
Yes, they would, if they filled, they would be required to put in compensatory storage, so they'd have to dig out some other area of their property and haul it away. So that's one issue. The other issue is they're trying to minimize just sheet flow from their property line across into their neighbor, and they're also putting in like a curb section to keep the water that comes along their garage and their driveway flowing toward the street. So they're incorporating both of those to try to minimize just sheet runoff as well as flooding water.
Okay. And they're doing this in full understanding that their garage will most likely flood in severe storm events, and they understand.
The base flood elevation is modeled based on the 100-year occurrence of a storm. So it is a very significant volume of water, and we've experienced those levels of rain in the village before.
Sometimes in the same 3 days. Anything else, Commissioner?
No, thank you.
Just want to make sure I didn't want to cut you off. Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I too want to say that I appreciate that they're taking these steps that they're not required to in getting this variance. You know, when I first started reading the materials, it sort of gave me pause that they're looking for a variance within the LPDA and thinking about the impact that it could have on the area. But the fact that they're going above and beyond by providing the dry well and trying to mitigate the concerns to the extent they can, I think does speak volumes. And like Commissioner Barnett, I look forward to the conversation that we'll be having, I hope, fairly soon about stormwater best management practices village-wide. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Olson?
Are we exposed, so in the situation that, a 100-year flood event, we're allowing, we're approving a variance, does that open the village up to any liability if there's property damage or things of that nature? Because we're allowing them to build something lower than our ordinance says, and it may flood, they may have property damage. I would assume we're not exposed in any way to liability.
We are not.
Thank you.
They're requesting it, our ordinance allows it, so no, we wouldn't be open to liability.
Thank you.
Assumption of the risk. Anything else?
That's all.
Thanks. I know that part of the one element of, or one requirement for granting a variance is there has to be some kind of hardship shown that is not the making of the petitioner. And this is one of those situations where there's a very difficult situation that's presented by this property. And I think we all like the fact that at the end of the day, what's being proposed is going to be a lot better and more compliant than what it currently is, but for one category with respect to the garage. So I think we all like the fact that we're getting to the right outcome for this, which is good. And I think that regardless of whether it's compelled on a macro level, certainly as a condition for granting this variance, we certainly could and should compel that the overall situation be made much better than it was before. And it appears to me that it's going to be substantially improved, which is not only going to be beneficial to this parcel, but most likely surrounding parcels. Or at least, well, yes, it would be better. It seems to me that the criteria for the allowance of a variance here have been met. We'll see if our other colleagues have any other questions, but that's sort of where I'm at right now. It is good to see folks going above and beyond, particularly when they're asking for a variance. That's always a good idea. Compulsion there, I think, is definitely appropriate. And just from not current experience, but past homeownership experience in Downers Grove, those dry wells, if they're properly constructed, really, really work well and can hold a lot of water. Particularly when you're dealing with situations where there isn't a lot of setback between homes, they can be a great solution. So I think that's a good recommendation, and glad to see it going in. That might be something that we consider making a requirement for new construction, because it's relatively inexpensive and very effective. We'll add that one to the things to think about. That's all I had.
The last three items are...
Commissioner Barnett wants to add one.
No, just one more question, sort of related. We're still not doing, or are we, any sort of LPDA recording with the county in terms of property and pins and things, right?
We are not at this time.
So, okay, it's a little bit of a rabbit trail subject, Mayor, but that's one thing. I understand the LPDAs and their value, and certainly their value here. I wonder if we ought to not be down the road considering that too, because as a potential property purchaser, you don't right now necessarily have any structured way of recognizing you're purchasing in an LPDA.
Unless you came down here and looked it up.
Yeah, right. I mean, which realistically. So
fair point.
It's just something to think about.
Actually, now you reminded me of something else I wanted to say. Speaking of the county, and I think Commissioner Olson touched on it in a different way. I know that we've been in communication with the county about this particular project, and I know that it's compliant with their standard, but I want to be absolutely sure that the county is okay with this.
Yes.
Because I know their stormwater management committee can be rather strict and harsh on the occasion.
Our ordinance requires us to notify them when somebody is asking for a variance, so, and a whole bunch of other individuals and entities as well. So we did that before the public hearing in front of the Oversight Committee.
Right.
And they sent an email back or a phone call to the Stormwater Administrator saying that they had no problem with it.
So we heard from Tony Charlton or Clayton or someone.
Yes, Clayton.
Thank you.
I believe.
All right, I feel better. Thank you. I had nothing further. Any other questions or comments? Terrific. Thank you. That brings us to, now we're into the parking ones.
Moving on to parking, we have three parking items tonight. I'll present two of them together. They're very similar. We have parking regulations and restrictions on Cross Street, south of Ogden, and for Bel Air Lane, north of Ogden. And this here, as you see here, is for Bel Air Lane. This ordinance has been prepared to amend section of the municipal code concerning no parking anytime restrictions along both sides of Bel Air Lane, north of Ogden Avenue, and along both sides of West Cross Street, south of Ogden Avenue. On Bel Air, this item was brought forward through resident calls and from the police department. We are recommending for approximately 120 feet and 140 feet north of Ogden Avenue. There are currently no parking restrictions, which results in the intersection being blocked during most morning and afternoon peak travel periods when it's predominantly employees of various businesses along here park along this parkway close to the intersection. Currently, the east side is signed with no parking, but there is not an ordinance on the books, so we cannot enforce it, so that's one of the cleanup items that's included here. There is not sufficient roadway space for both parking and maintaining two-way travel on Bel Air and to provide adequate sight distance for people trying to navigate the corner. And we also get school buses here because of the proximity of Bel Air School here, which adds to the congestion, as well as parents trying to drop off their kids at school. The second item is on I'm sorry, I'm going to skip ahead to Cross Street. This is south of Ogden. The Culvers is just to the north there. There's a proposed McDonald's just a lot over from this intersection to the west as well. This item was brought forward by the Community Development and Police Departments for a very similar reason. We do get employee parking along this section of the street too close to Ogden Avenue, which impedes vehicle safely turning and maneuvering through this intersection. And it is primarily a residential street, so we do get complaints about people having an inability to see and get around through that intersection. Both of these items were presented to the Transportation and Parking Commission on February 12th, and the commission voted unanimously to approve both items. And I might just pause here, since they're so related, to ask if there's any questions before I move on to the next one, if there are any questions.
That makes perfect sense. Any questions on these items from anyone in the audience? Commissioner Olson?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, are we concerned, in both cases it sounds that these is employee parking, employees of the businesses along Ogden Avenue, are we concerned that they may now park farther to the south or farther to the north and perhaps in residential areas? I mean, is that something that we're concerned about or that residents may be concerned about?
The residents did not express concern about that. I think from a safety standpoint, we'd prefer that they park a little farther away from the intersection. We're really just trying to prohibit them from parking right at the intersection. I think if it becomes too inconvenient, I mean, they're parking there for convenience, and there really is quite a bit of parking on this
There's adequate
property.
parking at the businesses, but
Right.
they're
I think
just parking there because it's
they're encouraging their
closer.
employees to park off-site so to give them more room to maneuver their cars on their lot.
Okay.
I mean, we can address that if it becomes a problem and we get complaints from residents. We will work with them to see what kind of parking, maybe we need a partial day prohibition on other portions of that street to keep that from happening.
Yeah, if they're not concerned with it, then I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Barnett, that looks like a question.
Just Commissioner Olson's just got my mind going a little bit, which is probably not good, but I suppose we probably want to wait and see what neighbors end up feeling like. But, you know, in most of our, kind of philosophically, in most of our residential areas where we expect commuters, we try and work pretty hard with our signage to make that an impossibility as opposed to just inconvenient. And that's really what's taken place here is that the intention is not that street parking, well, I shouldn't speak as though it's an assumption. I assume, like our residential areas, the intention is not that we would have business-related, whether they be commuter or employee, but business-related parking in the residential areas. I think we kind of choose to make that the case in all of our commuter-related areas. I wonder if we shouldn't make that the point of whatever restrictions we put in place, rather in areas where it's more commercial as opposed to commuter. Am I making any sense? The point is that they're parking there because it's easier than parking at the lot because they like the space for whatever they're doing at the business. Our point is it's a residential area. It's really not supposed to be business parking. To me, that's no different than the commuters we cause to not be able to park along the railroad community areas. It's a rambling thought, probably. Thank goodness it's a workshop. But David got me going, thinking about that. I mean, we really do put a lot of effort into that as it relates to the train line. And it's really not a dissimilar situation. I don't think we want to encourage, certainly we don't want to encourage, I'm not sure we even really want to permit business commercial parking in residential areas at all. So this may be short enough that it still causes it to happen.
I mean, just building off what Commissioner Barnett said, I think perhaps we put these restrictions in place and then do some follow-up to examine whether people are continuing to park farther south, farther north, and then perhaps some additional restrictions if
We will
it's
do
an
that.
issue.
Sure, we can keep an eye on it and come back in 6 months or whatever appropriate period of time, gauge the effectiveness of these measures and if there need to be further measures to
I would-
achieve the intended goal.
I would bet they just park in the parking lot instead of traveling down the street. But we'll see what happens.
See what happens.
Let's find out. If they don't, then they don't. Other comments? On both the Cross Street or
Cross and Bellerin.
The last
Yes.
item is a proposed no parking regulation on Concord Drive, which is in the vicinity of Downers Grove South High School and is used regularly by students parking along the north side of Concord, as well as the ball fields are used quite a bit on the weekends and on afternoons, after school. This street was reconstructed, this whole neighborhood of the streets were reconstructed last year, and as part of our traffic calming program, we constructed some bulb outs and to slow down traffic, and we also put in a center lane to better guide traffic around the bulb outs and to slow down traffic to kind of visually narrow the lanes. And what that's resulted in is when there's parking there, it makes it very tight for cars to pass each other with parking on both sides because of the nature of the parking there being all day. So the recommendation is to designate the south area of Concord Drive no parking anytime, and to impose right now there's no parking anytime west of Stonewall, and which we're recommending to change that to 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. to keep students from parking there, but to allow residents to park there during the remainder of the day. This was presented to TAP. All the residents in the surrounding neighborhood were notified of the item and of the meeting at TAP, and it was unanimously supported by the Transportation and Parking Commission at their meeting on February 12, 2014, and staff recommends amendment of the village code to implement these parking restrictions, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the audience on this item? Questions or comments from members of the village council? Thank you.
The final first reading item tonight involves amendments to the village's liquor license classifications, and I'll turn it over to Assistant Village Attorney Dawn Didier to introduce this item.
Good evening.
Good evening. All right, there's one ordinance, but it relates to two different license classifications, and they were both based on requests from two separate businesses. The first was from Oak Trace Life Space Community, and they were requesting an amendment to the liquor code to create a new license classification to allow for the sale of alcohol at a retirement facility. So with respect to that, in Chapter 3 of the code, we would be adding a definition of retirement facility, and then we would also be creating an RF retirement facility license classification, and that would authorize the sale of liquor for consumption on the premises only to the residents of that community and to their guests. It would only be allowed in the dining rooms and the outdoor areas where meals are served. No packaged sales would be allowed. The ordinance would also be amended to show that there is not a limit on the number of these types of licenses. It was considered by the Liquor Commission at their March 6th meeting, and it was recommended for approval. Do you want me to stop there for questions before I go on to the next portion?
Please. Just one clarification. At this point, the request is to create the category.
Correct, not...
Right. No, it's not being awarded to anyone.
Right.
Although it's being requested to be created by one petitioner, Oak Trace Life Space Community, which I think we've actually hosted it. They've hosted us for a coffee with the council there, so we know what their facility's like and the capabilities and capacity that they have. But they would then have to come through the ordinary course of the Liquor Commission and meet all the criteria.
They have
before a
to
license
submit
would
their
be-
application, and
Right.
it would go back before the Liquor Commission, and then
This
it
would be merely creating the opportunity for them to request such a license.
Correct.
Other questions or comments from anyone in the audience on this liquor item? Questions from the council? Very good. We'll go to the next one then, please.
The next one, the second request was from Caputo's Fresh Market, requesting to amend an existing classification, which would be Class P-O, which is for grocery stores for off-premise sales and then on-site consumption. Currently, the PO license Z is required to be located in the downtown business district. The proposed amendment would remove that requirement so they could be anywhere in the village. It would also revise the area allowed for on-site consumption. Currently, the ordinance says that that area shall not exceed 750 square feet. That would be changed to say that the area for on-site consumption shall not exceed 20% of the retail square footage area of the premises. And also, the ordinance would change it, right now there's only one available PO license, it would change it to 3. And again, people would have to apply. This wouldn't be granting the license to Caputo's, they would have to go through the process through the Liquor Commission as well.
Right, and again, so that, for clarification purposes, the PO license was really somewhat created and tailored to one particular business when they came to town, which is why I think it was done on a test basis to try it out, and it was limited to that location, more or
Correct.
less, within the downtown, and square footage that approximates what their use was.
Correct.
And it's been there in play now for several years. I forget how long.
Yeah.
But now the question is, someone else would like to do it in a grocery store environment, but in a different location and with a different footprint. So therefore, to create, what we basically are doing is keeping the same license codification, but not making it so tailored to what is
one
essentially
business.
one business.
Right.
And give the opportunity for other businesses to request the same license. They still have to satisfy all the criteria and everything. And for the lack of, just to be really clear about it, basically, what Caputo's is looking forward to, the opportunity to apply for a license would allow them to do what a similar grocery store concept a little further east has been doing for years.
Correct.
That's really what this is about. And then we're making it 3 because we just want to have a little room in case.
So we wouldn't, yeah, if somebody else wanted to do it, so
We
we
have
wouldn't
another
have to come back.
fantastic
Right.
grocery store come to
Right.
town, they would have the same opportunity.
Right.
Okay. Questions or comments from the audience? Commissioner Olson?
The change from 750 square feet to 20% of retail area square footage, would the existing licensee still be in compliance with that new requirement? The business that has the existing?
You know what, I don't know the answer to that. I would have to check on that.
I'm going to guess that 20% of the one place is a lot more than 750 square feet would be my guess, but it's worth confirming.
I believe it is.
Oh, well, your question is.
I don't know how
if you-
big.
Oh, I'm
Existing.
sorry,
Because
I
it's-
understand. You're saying
Right.
that the 20% of, yes, I got you.
In other words, is Lemon Tree at least 5
Right,
times
fair,
750?
good question.
Right.
Now I understand your question. I didn't understand it. I had it backwards. Good question.
Right, so I'll check.
And if not, certainly we have no intention of taketh away. We'd probably have to just adjust it. It has to be at least 750, but up to, or 20% or something.
Well, and it says retail sales area, so there's a lot of part of Lemon Tree that's behind the scenes, I'm sure, too.
Right, well, we can find out.
We'll find out.
Good question.
The concept I have no problem at all with, but as it relates to that 20% and the 750, I guess I'd like to hear somebody, from the Liquor Commission or the commissioner himself maybe, or staff, react to whether or not there might be some consideration for 20%, but some sort of a not-to-exceed number. I'm not trying to create a science project or an LSAT test question out of this, but 20% of Jewel or Dominic's or, arguably the grocery area at a
Stick with
Target.
Dominick's, that would be a good one.
The grocery area at a Target or whatever could start to be a pretty huge area, and the intention of this is pretty obvious, and I think it's just fine. But our experience with liquor licensees has been the challenging ones are those ones that get pretty large. And I know that while Lemon Tree and Caputo's have a certain intention and how they would operate, and Lemon Tree's been operating that way, and I don't think, certainly this commissioner doesn't have any problem with that, I wouldn't want to cause a situation where somebody who was intending to be a grocery store and thought this was a great thing to add to what they do suddenly found themselves in a position where having a fifth of their place be a bar was a better business proposition. And so I'd just be curious as to whether or not there's any wording or arrangement, and, talking to the folks at Lemon Tree or the folks at Caputo's would certainly be input we want. I don't have the answer to it, but it makes me a little nervous to just use the 20%, because that could be it could be bigger than 3/4 of our licensees. And I don't know that that's not the point,
Fair question, and I think it's also a good point, because I don't think we want to, especially since we're trying to make this a broader category that would be applicable to additional petitioners that might come later. We also don't want to unduly tailor it to the one example we know is before us, because 20% of where it's actually going we could figure out pretty easily, because we know exactly where they're going to ask for it to go. We can figure that out, and I think we know what one could take a trip east and see how it works in reality, and I think that's what is intended. But to your point, maybe we just come up with some language that makes sure that it's nothing. I don't know. I see your point. I don't know the answer
either.
But yeah, I think it's worth looking into. If it's something that needs to be a little bit more involved in a mere percentage requirement, and I don't have the answers. I sit here, but maybe something we can think about.
Staff can take a look at that suggestion.
Well, and maybe, just like you all provided the answers to our zoning ordinance questions regarding, like real-world examples, that was real helpful to kind of get a better understanding of the question. And so maybe, and I kind of think that's what you're saying, it's like seeing a jewel, seeing a dot, and seeing what that actually means, so we can.
Right, and clearly with this, we know exactly what it is, because it's a form of Dominic's.
Yes.
But to your point, it's really the next one that
The footprint, the map
correct.
of it.
Right. Good question. Okay. Thank you. Other questions or comments? Terrific. Well, that brings us to the end of our workshop or our first reading agenda. It brings us on to item 10. Oh.
Mayor, if I could, Michael Casa, President of Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation, 5159 Mokel in downtown Downers Grove. I just want to introduce Robertino Presta. He's the CEO of Angelo Caputo's Fresh Markets, and he's sitting over here, and I just wanted to welcome him to Downers Grove.
Good evening. Good to see you again. Glad to see you. You found the one place in the audience that's shadowed. It's hard to see you, but welcome, and we're glad to see you coming to our community. I know there's been a lot of excitement to it, so thank you for choosing Downers Grove. Thank you, Mr. Cass. I appreciate that. Now we are at the end of our workshop, item 9, and on to item 10, which is the mayor's report. And I have a couple things that I want to report out, as I tried to do with respect to things going on at the DuPage County Stormwater Management Committee, which I mentioned earlier. I had shared with the council, I believe a month ago, the status of the county's efforts with respect to floodplain mapping, and they're updating the floodplain mapping, which goes somewhat to a point that Commissioner Barnett raised earlier. And I think I mentioned that, well, I'll just state it. During the last week in February and the first 2 weeks in March, county staff met with representatives from 19 different communities, including Downers Grove, to discuss the county's proposed floodplain maps. So we have put our 2 cents into that process along with 18 other communities. Most of the comments that were either submitted to the county via letter, submitted through other agencies, in various meetings have all been taken in by county staff, and they are working to address those comments from both ourselves and many of our neighbors in DuPage County. The county stormwater management staff is estimating that the preliminary maps could be issued by this fall. And county staff is currently preparing a memorandum with details regarding what the community issues have been, because we know what ours are, but I think we would all be interested in knowing what our neighbors had to say, and what it is that, what basically county staff's position is on those issues. That memorandum should be available in about a week or so, so we probably want to keep our eyes open for that. I think that's something that would be of interest to the council when that's available. The other thing that I wanted to mention was, as you know, the county has talked about putting together its own stormwater needs assessment, something that Downers Grove did, I don't know, coming up almost 10 years ago now, before we undertook a lot of our stormwater projects. So the county is putting together basically a needs assessment. The timing there is that they have put together a preliminary needs assessment and have met with members of the county board with respect to that needs assessment. The presentation, report, and all appendices that were shared with the county board members is available on the county website. It's the DuPageco.org. I won't give you the whole URL address, but if anyone's interested, basically, if you look under DuPage County org and search for stormwater management, you'll find it. So you'll see where they're at so far. The next step, which is important, is that county staff and the Stormwater Management Planning Committee members, which I am one as a representative of District 3 municipalities to that committee, will be meeting with critical stakeholder groups such as other municipalities and others who have interest in this needs assessment, which would include non-municipalities as well, to gather input on the program assessment. So this outreach process will begin by county staff later this month. So that is another thing that I think we want to keep an eye out, because of course the needs assessment, as the county has explained it, is a first step to figuring out what it is that they think they need to do and what it will cost, and that will of course, I believe, lead to their discussion at the county level of how they're going to pay for it. So obviously something we want to follow very closely, so I want to share that with everyone as well. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but since these are two issues of great importance to us, I just want to keep everybody apprised as much as I can. That's all I had in the mayor's report. So that brings us to the manager's report. Mr. Baker.
No report tonight, Mayor.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 12, attorney's report. Ms. Didier.
Thank you. There are a few items tonight. An ordinance amending certain liquor license classifications, an ordinance granting a stormwater variance for 4924 Linscott Avenue, and ordinances establishing no parking regulations on certain portions of Cross Street, Concord Drive, and Bel Air Lane. That's it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. That brings us to item 13, council member new business. Do any members of the village council have any items of new business they would like to share with the rest of the council? There's one thing that I wanted to share with everyone. As you know, we've gotten a fair amount of media attention with respect to our efforts to manage stormwater, and we've also gotten some media attention, whether we liked it or not, with respect to our recent consideration of amending our foul ordinance. Well, apparently the word of those two things caught the interest of a company in Muskogee, Oklahoma, called Waterfowl Concepts, Inc. Apparently, they design chicken coop systems that double as rain gardens and can actually reduce stormwater impact.
This is a joke.
And I thought the council might want to maybe entertain a presentation from them and then consider whether these could count as credits towards the stormwater utility. April Fool's. Just kidding. Any new business, many members of the council? I was waiting for someone to stop me.
No, we were just going to let you go.
In all seriousness, if there's nothing else, then I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you and good night.